Uh, right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. There are regular relationships, and then there are soulmate level relationships. Soulmates is the kind of connection that one aspires to have with a person. As per Cindy Sansoff-Braff, at the very basis of it all, soulmates are spiritual partners who bring out the best in each other. Welcome to Umesh Shah Presents Sunday Life and Learn Talks. Today's topic is Finding the Soul in Soulmate, How to Become a Power Couple, presented by Shruti Jha. Shruti is an experienced clinical psychologist and psychotherapist with over 9 years of practice with a demonstrated history of working in the hospital, education, and healthcare industry. She's an expert wellness educator with specializations in adult psychotherapy, couples counseling, marital and family therapy, child and adolescent psychology, psychological assessments, psychotherapy, and overall wellness management. She's a gold medalist in her field of education. She currently practices pan-India / globally with the aim to facilitate holistic understanding, further leading to complete social, emotional, and psychological well-being for all her clients. Shruti, without taking more time, I'll hand it over to you to present Finding the Soul in Soulmate, How to Become a Power Couple.
Thank you so much, Umesh. Thanks a lot for this warm welcome and a very, very apt introduction to today's topic about how do you find the soul in your soulmate and how do we all work towards becoming a power couple. So I move ahead and let's start by understanding what exactly are we to expect here in this presentation. So as the word suggests, couples, right? So this couple dynamics could be anything. It could be married, not married, heterosexual, gay, lesbian, young or old. It covers all the categories, right? This presentation is going to talk about some of the skills and principles that are very reliable and valid. They are coming out of scientific based information, which will improve the communication as well as the connection in the relationships. We're going to talk more about action plans and changes rather than theoretical concepts. So hence this becomes applicable to individuals who are very early in their relationships, right? They're just in the building stages of partnership, as well as it is for partners of many, many years who want to change and improve some specific aspects of their relationship also. We're going to have a few activities and exercises which will help us understand a healthy interpersonal relationship. Overall, there'll be some understanding of conflict management also. The basic essence that we'll all be learning would be how to connect and how to communicate. And towards the end, I'll share a small 4-week relationship improvement plan, something that will be very, very simple for all of us to implement in a day-to-day functioning, a 1-month plan of improvement. All right, so going ahead, we have the phrase that says, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, this was first coined by the great philosopher Aristotle. And if we apply this on to couples therapy, what we understand is that as individuals, we might have our own strengths, we might have our own weaknesses, but when we come together, when two individuals come together, we complement and supplement each other. And that is how a whole becomes much, much greater than the sum of its part. A couple shall always be greater than two individuals combined. So with that, a sense, we begin with today's activity by assessing ourselves. This is a quick yes or no activity that all of us can do for ourselves. trying to understand that are we a power couple or not, right? So the first question, if you have something to note, you can note. Otherwise, you can just, answer it for yourself. It says that, do you feel that you recognize and acknowledge each other's strengths and weaknesses? A yes or a no? Yeah, not always. Do you think that your partner and this relationship brings out the best in you? Do you feel supported and encouraged by your partner? Do you feel confident and secure as an individual in the relationship? Do you spend a lot of time figuring out what went wrong in some conversation or probably in the entire relationship? Is it easy for you to share your thoughts as well as your emotions with your partner? Do you trust your partner that she will honestly and actively listen to you? We're getting a lot of yes. That's wonderful. Do you and your partner validate each other's positive as well as negative emotional experiences? How often do we find ourselves validating the anger from our partners? Do you sometimes compromise on self-related factors to support your partner? And the last one says, can you effectively repair damage after a disagreement and feel connected again? Great. So I think we had a combinations of a few yes, a lot of yes, I would say, a few no, and a few maybe here and there, right? So this gives you a very basic idea. I'll be going ahead and you'll understand the relationship between this activity and how we are going ahead to some of the common problems, to some of the common themes of problem that we usually have in a couple dynamic, right? But I'm going to ask you now a very vital question, the most important question of all. Do you genuinely feel grateful to have your partner in your life? This is the most important question because if we have gratitude, if we are grateful to our partners for their presence in our life, all the other 10 questions that we just answered, whether a yes or a no or a maybe, they always have a scope to be worked upon if we are grateful. So moving ahead, my only request from all of you would be to be grateful. That would be the prerequisite to become a power couple, gratitude, right? So let's go ahead now. And as I was telling you earlier, that there are some common problem areas, right? That we are linking from the 10 questions that we just, answered. Like these common problem areas are like emotional distancing. You feel there is lack of intimacy. There might be some disagreements, anger outbursts. You might feel deprived. There might be a cyclic pattern of unresolved conflict. There might be name calling, belittling, threats, blaming the other person, conflicting concepts of partnership. There might be some unexpressed needs, some assumptions about the partner, some misunderstandings, a feeling of not feeling heard, some unmet expectations, feeling guilty, hurt, and some form of discouragement and maybe bordering towards a clinical syndrome of depression as well. So these are some of the common problems that come out of all the areas that we just answered, right? And now we're going to look at some solutions towards these. Now, the first solution talks about listening, right? So I think we'd all agree that there are times that it is very, very hard to listen to your partner, right? It's always easier to space out. It's always easier to rehearse your reply, to filter the content for any kind of danger signs, to collect evidence for your own opinion, to pass judgments, and so on. All these seems to be the very, very, easier options as compared to actually listening, right? But But listening is the important of all communication skills, right? And it can create and it can preserve the intimacy in a relationship. When you listen well, you know, you understand your partner better, you stay closely in tune, and you tend to really, you know, enjoy the relationship more also. And understanding relation listening in very two simple words would be commitment and a complement, right? So why do we call it a commitment? Because, you know, you are committing to understanding, committing to empathizing, committing to putting aside your own interest, your own needs, your own prejudices, and then to see your relationship through your partner's eyes. And why do we call it a compliment? Because it becomes a compliment to your partner, because it says that, you know, I care about you. Every time that you listen actively to your partner, you're saying that you care about him or her. You say that I want to know what you think. You're saying I want to know how you feel, and I want to know what your needs are. So hence, active listening becomes a compliment. Now, there is a lot more to listening than merely being quiet when your partner is talking, because active listening is kind of differentiated by the intention that you have. If your intention is to understand, if you have your intention to enjoy, to learn from, to help your partner, then you are really listening. Now, I've seen a lot of couples, you know, where active listening is a rarity. You hardly find that. What they indulge in is called pseudo listening, you know, false form of listening, pseudo. So pseudo listening, what happens is that your intention is not clearly understood or enjoyed or learned. You know, you're not there to help your partner, right? Your intentions may be, you know, contaminated by some barriers, by some blocks, right? We have there are a lot of researches that have been carried out in this field, and over the past years, you know, my experience with couple counseling, there are a lot of barriers that one may employ to, you know, while we listen. So the question is that, are you an active listener, or do you indulge in pseudo listening, right? Why don't you all ask this to yourself? And in case if you feel you might at times be indulging in pseudo listening, then the next activity that is coming up would be very helpful, right? So let's see this. So in this activity, continuing from previous, pseudo listening, okay, I think somebody is asking, what is pseudo listening? Pseudo listening is a form of false listening, right? When you're not actively engaging in listening to your partner, your intention is not to understand and help your partner. You're more, you know, compromised towards these barriers. That is the time when you are pseudo listening to your partner. So I have this list of barriers in front of you. So you're going to assess it for yourself, whether you're an active listener or whether you indulge in pseudo listening. If any of these barriers or blocks are present while you listen to your partner, it will automatically become pseudo listening. If not, then it might be active listening. So let's quickly run through this. The first one talks about mind reading. So as this word says, that you are mind reading when you disregard or when you distrust what your partner is actually saying, right? So you're not paying attention to the content of what your partner is saying, but you are trying to figure out what he or she might really mean when he or she is saying that, right? So mind reading. You try to interpret the mind of your partner without actually trying to listen to what he or she is saying, right? So that becomes the barrier there, mind reading as a block. Then the second barrier that we have talks about rehearsing. So in rehearsing, what happens is that you become so busy rehearsing what you're going to say next to your partner that you do not really listen to what your partner is saying. You're engrossed with your own thoughts, with your own content being rehearsed in your head. So you're not really listening to what your partner is saying. Then the third block talks about filtration. Now, as the word suggests, in filtration, what happens is that you will selectively listen to a few things that your partner is saying, right? You'll not listen to the others. Probably you might feel judged, you might feel criticized. So you kind of filter out the negatives. You only kind of selectively pay attention to what you want to hear. So then that there in that example, filtration becomes a barrier. Then the next barrier that we have is of judging. Here what happens is that you have stopped listening to your partner because there is a very strong preconceived notion, a very strong negative judgment that has come in your way. So you're not listening for the purpose of assigning blame, right? You start listening to kind of put labels onto your partner. You're listening only to judge your partner. You're listening only to come to a negative conclusion and probably prove yourself right. Let's see, this is what I knew that you're going to say, and see, that is what it is. So there is a preconceived notion that I already have in my head, and then I'm approaching to hear you. That's what the barrier of judging talks about. Then, of course, we have the very common daydreaming. So, you merely stop listening to your partner and you drift away in your own thoughts. And this is very common. You'll find yourself doing that, not just with your partners, but many other places also. So that's daydreaming. Then the next barrier is on advising. So in advising, what happens is that, your partner barely has the time to speak a sentence, right? And you jump in with your advice. There is this constant need to search for the right solution. There is a very, very strong urge within you to fix up everything, right? And that defeats the simple need to be heard. You just want to come up with an advice, a quick solution, and you want everything to end. So there, advising becomes a barrier to listening. And then we have something that's called being right. Now, being right is a block. It becomes a block and a barrier to listening because, it protects you from hearing anything that suggests that you are less than perfect, right? So in order to avoid that, suggestion that your partner might be coming across with, that you may be wrong, you will change the subject. You will try to justify, you will make excuses, you will try to, fight off the criticism, and you will, by any means, you will try your level best to prove yourself to be perfect. So that urge to be always right and to be the perfect person will again not allow you to listen to your partner. So that's the barrier of being right. Then, of course, we have derailing. So derailing, as the word suggests, you change the subject, right? Whenever the conversation that you have with your partner becomes very personal or very threatening, you will, misdirect it. Probably you will try to avoid by adding some humor, by changing the topic, by bringing in something more important, etc. Right? You derail the conversation and you're not listening to your partner. And the last one talks about placating. So in placating, what happens is that you are very, very quick to agree, right? So as soon as your partner expresses any form of doubt, any form of anxiety, any form of irritation, any form of, anger, you jump in with a yes. And you're like, oh yes, you're right. You are absolutely right. I know, I'm sorry, I'll fix it, I'm done. So you are placating, right? You are so concerned being this nice and a supportive and an agreeable person that you're not even giving your partner enough time to fully express his or her thought. And that's how placating becomes a barrier to listening. So now I leave it up to you to figure out, do you pseudo listen or do you actively involve yourself in listening? So the list is there in front of you. I suggest a small activity that all of you can do at home later on, that you can describe, go back into the past and think about 4 or 5 situations, right, wherein you felt that the channel of communication between you and your partner had broken down, primarily because of something that we just discussed, something because of those listening barriers, right? So go back to those situations, understand which block of or which barrier of this listening you might have used. And probably in this tabular form, you can make a record for yourself. And once you have this, it will be followed by a small self-reflection activity wherein you can have these discussions for yourself, right? You ask yourself that what are the blocks that I find myself using the most? You're very, very consistent, whether it is being placating, whether it is, daydreaming or rehearsing or mind reading. Which one do you use the most? That would be your first area of reflection. Are those situations similar, right? Let's say you have the same barrier that you're being using again and again. What is the similarity in those situations? Can you figure out some common theme? If the barriers are same, then what topics do you have the most trouble listening to? Are there any themes in the topic itself wherein you have maximum barriers? Do you block other people as well apart from your partner? Now, this is a very important reflective question, that there are times that listening might not be a skill that we are not using even outside the relationship, right? Your workplace, your other family members. So do you block other people also? Would be an integral part to explore. And the last question for your discussion could be that, do you think being aware of your listening blocks can actually change your usual style of listening, right? So with that, I leave this activity up to all of you to take out time whenever with a clear mind space and try it out once. And then probably the last question will be more effective then. Yeah. Okay. So with that, we move on to the second solution, which is called as reciprocal communication. Now, we all are aware that communication is a very collaborative process, and it is a two-way process, right? So not one person is responsible for everything. For reciprocal communication, there are three integral things that we need to remember. The first one is paraphrasing. The second one is clarification. And the third one talks about feedback. So as this word suggests, paraphrasing. So whenever you are talking to your partner, right, and your partner says something important to you, you should state in your own words what you think your partner just said, right? Paraphrasing is very, very important part of good listening. You can preface your paraphrase with lead-ins like, what I hear you saying is da da da. Or in other words, is this what you're trying to say? Let me get this straight. Or, so you feel that. Or, if I understand you correctly, would you say that? Such phrases will consistently help your partner to also be sure of what he or she has communicated. If you talk about the advantages of paraphrasing, if you find yourself engaging in paraphrasing, you will see that gradually you are preventing the listening blocks. You will not be indulging in any of those barriers if you paraphrase. Okay, then you will also find yourself correcting any false assumptions or any misinterpretations at the very spot. You will not be carrying it as a grudge later on to become into something big. You're also giving your partner the priceless gift of being acknowledged and being heard when you paraphrase. You, as I was telling you earlier, you are keeping that irritation and that anger or any other negative emotion from escalating. And the simplest of the all advantages that you are helping yourself to remember what your partner really said. So the next time that your partner speaks to you, try paraphrasing. And once you paraphrase, you automatically move towards the next concept of clarification. That is something that naturally leads, paraphrasing will naturally lead to clarifying. So what happens here is that you tell your partner what you thought you heard, right? And then you find out whether you were right or whether you were wrong. And that is when you ask questions to clarify. Now, it's very important to note here that when you paraphrase your questions, remember what the intention is. Your intention with clarification and paraphrasing is to understand your partner, is to learn is to help your partner, right? See, your intention with clarification should never be to interrogate, should never be to pressure your partner for your own point of view, should not be to belittle, should not be to blame, should not be to manipulate, right? So you have to ask, when you're clarifying, you have to ask questions with a very broader picture, a picture that includes specific details, it has finer shades of feelings, of emotions, and which eventually leads to a greater understanding of your partner's point of view. So what's going to help you when you clarify is that you ask, facts like who, what, where, when, how, and you ask questions like, how do you feel about that, or what were you thinking back then? So that means clarification will not be interrogation. And then the third and the last important thing when we talk about reciprocal communication is about feedback. Now, feedback comes after you have paraphrased what your partner said and you've asked questions to clarify your understanding. So, after that, you calmly relate without any judgment your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own opinions, your own desires. You share your inner experience of your partner's account without going back towards falling into those listening barrier traps. So feedback, allows us to accomplish three things, right? First, at the first, it is like another chance to check out your perception with your partner, right? To correct any misconceptions. Secondly, what feedback does is that it provides your partner with information about the accuracy and the effects of his or her communication that may have fallen upon you. And the third thing is that your partner with a good feedback gets the benefit of your point of view, a very fresh point of view. And that is how feedback becomes important. While giving a feedback, three elements should be kept in mind. A good feedback is always immediate, is always very honest, and is always very supportive, right? And when I say immediate, don't waste time. Don't say that I had this conversation, probably I'll begin a feedback later on. No, don't waste time. As soon as you think you understand your partner's story through paraphrasing and asking clarification, give your feedback right away. Even a delay of an hour can lessen the impact. So immediacy is very important. Honesty, of course, all of us understand that the feedback should be a real reaction. It should not be distorted by any fears of criticism or any fears of manipulation or judgment. It should reveal your honest, true feelings, right? If you feel that your partner is wrong and you feel threatened, you need to express that in your feedback. Right? It has to be honest. And the third part talks about being supportive. Now, just because you have the leverage of being honest, it should not come up with brutality. You need to find ways to soften those negative opinions. Of course, without destroying the meaning, right? So let's say, for example, I think maybe you made a mistake. Instead of saying that, oh my God, you really blew it up this time. Or, another example could be that I'm feeling insecure about you leaving me. This is a better supportive way of saying, instead of saying that, you know what, I'll die if you ever leave me. So the threatening component is there. So that is how the supportive element is introduced in your feedback. So this solution of reciprocal communication is again a practice-based skill, which I would encourage all of you to probably try it out once. Now, the third solution, or before we go on to the third solution, there are some practical gems for reciprocal communication. It says, it gives you three important aspects that when you are the speaker, right? Explain your point of view briefly, try to use I statements and avoid any blame or name calling. And when you are the listener, you pay close attention to your partner's feelings, opinions, and need. Don't directly disagree or argue, but towards the end, ask questions for the basis of clarification only. So you can remember these 3 pointers individually when you are the speaker versus when you are the listener. So that takes us to the third solution that talks about expression of your feelings. So expressing feelings here is a matter of identifying and then giving appropriate voice to your emotions, right? So when I say identifying your feelings, you identify the way it is, whether good or bad, because there are some times that a situation will make you feel something, but it is very hard to say what the feeling is. So in that case, you begin with a very simple question. Is this feeling good or bad? You just take a moment, close your eyes, take some several deep breath in and out, and focus on the experience that causes that ambiguous feeling, and then ask yourself, is the overall sensation positive or negative? Are you drawn to the situation or are you repelled? So that ways you will get a very, very basic understanding of the good or the bad. Then it's important that you understand your feelings and your emotions in terms of something as simple as location, size, shape, and color, right? So once you've decided whether the feeling is good or bad, you try to give it a location in your body. Okay. So what you can do is you can close your eyes again, you can focus on your breathing again, relax yourself, scan your body while feeling, and then you check where is the maximum tension in your body, whether is it in your chest area, whether there it's in your back, whether it's there in your stomach, your hands, your neck, where exactly do you feel the maximum tension in your body, right? So then you concentrate on that area even more closely and try to associate that area with that feeling. How much space is this pain taking up? Is it small? Is it very large? And that is when gradually you begin to get an idea of the size. And the moment you get an idea of the size, the pain of the emotion, try to visualize a shape. In your mind's eyes, you trace the feeling, as an all-round shape. Is it a regular shape? Is it a ball? Is it a cone? Or is it irregular? And then you move on to the color. The color comes to your mind as you contemplate the feeling. Is it a bright red? Is it orange? Is it a cool blue? Is it green? What color do you assign that emotion? So it's important that you understand that don't evaluate or judge your feelings, right? In this exercise, when you do that, just merely observe what comes up to you when you try to identify this location, the shape, the size, and the color, right? And then we figure out, what does this emotion or this feeling tell you, right? So this stage, you imagine what you're feeling, that you imagine that this feeling is talking to you. What is this emotion telling you? Let those words come out spontaneously. Don't force them, don't judge them, right? So you might hear meaningful clues to the nature of your feeling, words like loss, words like gone, words like unfair, sadness, bad, angry, etc. So let that feeling talk by itself. Then you gradually move on to, what do you want to do? The fourth stage. Now, when you feel this feeling, what are the actions that you are drawn to? Do you find yourself running away from it? Do you find yourself embracing it? Do you find yourself hugging it, hitting it, hiding from it, or screaming or crying, or trying to shake it off from your body? What do you see yourself doing? What is the action? What is your behavior? So imagine yourself performing that action. Now, as a part, you have to do this as a part of your imagination only. You don't have to restrain your actions the way you might do it in real life. Let's just let your imagination flow. So here what happens is that the action, the urge, that the feeling is a good clue, is the actual nature of the feeling, right? If you want to hug or comfort someone, you might be feeling sympathetic, or you might be feeling love, or you might be feeling desire, right? If you want to hit, or if you want to, shake someone off, you probably might be feeling very angry, or you might be frustrated. If you want to cry, if you want to hide, if you want to turn away, run away, then you might be actually feeling very sad or depressed or anxious. So that is how your actions, your behavior become a manifestation of your affective presentation. That is your emotions, your feelings. Then the next component talks about what past experience does it remind you of? Now, this is very important. You compare that. Have you had the same feeling before? Let your mind drift off to the past and focus on to a time when you felt something similar, right? And when you remember that, you try and figure out who you were with, who was the person, what was happening around you, the surroundings. How were you able to identify with this feeling? How did you express it then? Or did you fail to express it? How was this feeling in the past? Now, why I say this is important, because sometimes it's easier to identify your feelings by just looking for a repeated pattern in your life. And that is why looking in the past experiences becomes vital for us. And then we may move on to naming your feelings, whether it is a positive or a negative name: anger, happiness, sadness, love, desire, whatever feeling, whatever name that you give to your feeling. And as as an exercise to this activity, I would suggest that you maintain a feelings diary, right? Let's say again, for the next week or so, you make a note of each time you interact with your partner and you think about your partner and you are aware of a particular feeling. So you note these things down and you identify your feeling. It'll help you a lot in noticing as well as clarifying your state of being at that very moment. So that is what is about the third solution of expressing our feelings. Then the fourth solution talks about communicating our needs, right? So I have very simple 3 guidelines, right? That is the best insurance that you can express your feelings clearly, right? And that your partner will remain receptive when you do so. So usually things go wrong when we try to express our feelings because it is always very dominated with the I statement. That is me. So using these I statements, I'll give you some examples and then probably you'll understand it better. So you have to take the responsibility of your feelings by using these I statements rather than, targeting it as a you statement. The moment it becomes a you statement, there is a lot of blame and criticism involved, right? Let's say I am going to say that you drive me crazy, you make me furious, versus accepting that I am furious at the moment. I am very mad. So I take the responsibility onto myself. I am expressing my emotion of being mad, being angry. However, I am not blaming it upon my partner by saying, you made me furious. I take the responsibility of that emotion. So that is how using I statement becomes very important while communicating our needs. Then, of course, doing that with a lot of honesty, right? You have to resist the temptation to describe your feelings in ways that manipulate or distort or, hide the truth. So what really happens is when you cut off your partner from the true feelings, you're actually cutting yourself off, right? And you are making it difficult for yourself to express genuine feelings. You might have seen couple, like I've seen couples in couple counseling who come up to me and say that I don't understand when he gets angry. I can't figure out when he gets mad. So that is where it will eventually lead you if you are not honest in communicating your needs. And along with honesty, congruency is also important, right? So what do I mean by being congruent is that, it's very confusing when your tone of voice and your body language doesn't match your words, right? If you say that, I'm sad, but you're smiling and you're dancing around, what do you think your partner is supposed to believe? Your words or your actions? So that is where congruency becomes important. If you notice that your body language is incongruent with your statements, then this might indicate that you actually do feel differently about the topic than you actually think you do. So you need to spend a little more time looking within, looking inside, reflecting, introspecting, and trying to understand how you really feel, right? Only then can we work towards a state of congruency. So that's how communicating your needs can be used as a solution. Then moving ahead, we talk about the 10, important commandments of clean and clear communication, right? So when I talk about clean communication, what I actually mean is that you taking up responsibility, you taking up responsibility for the impact of what you are saying. So here again, honesty becomes very important, right? It means that you're being able to complete rather than you're leaving those important pieces of communication unspoken. And of course, being supportive, wherein you are fostering that closeness, you're understanding why your partner is defensive or why your partner is maintaining that distance. And to do that, there are a few simple commandments, right? You're going to avoid any judgmental words or any loaded terms, right? You're not going to use words, because the moment you start using loaded words to convey to your partner, you're trying to say that he or she is flawed, right? So you're not going to use words like uncooperative and this self-absorbed style of yours, or the self-involved style, or you're not going to show your poor me attitude there, because these words, they attack and they undermine the feeling of the worth of your partner. And there is no space in a caring relationship for these judgmental words. Another thing that you need to remember is to avoid any global labels. So global labels are basically some, generalized words for your partner's identity. I might, when I'm angry, I might say, you're so stupid, you're just so crazy, you're so selfish, right? When I use these labels for my partner, what I'm actually doing is that I am not attacking my partner's behavior. I'm attacking my partner's identity. I'm attacking my partner's personality. So I'm shifting my focus from the current situation to his personality. So it conveys the message that you are completely bad, not just in this moment of altercation, but you are bad and you are selfish even otherwise. So that's the danger with labels, and hence we need to avoid those labels. Then the third one talks about avoiding you messages of blame and acquisition, right? So let's say that I'm very, very angry with my partner, and I'm saying that, you never come home on time. So you, blame, acquisition, can be replaced by saying that when you come home late, I feel sad about missing the lovely evening with you. So I'm still conveying my feelings about the fact that I do not like being alone. However, that is not loaded with any blame and acquisition. So hence we avoid these you messages. Another thing that we need to avoid is the past, the old history, right? Clean communication has to stick with the issue at hand. We're not here collecting evidences to underscore the seriousness of, his or her fault. So a simple rule to follow is that never bring up old history, especially when you're angry. Another thing that we need to avoid are the negative comparisons, the threats, right? We're not going to make your partner feel bad about him or herself, right? The purpose is not to reject, the purpose is to resolve. Hence, negative comparisons and threats should be avoided. And the body language should be very, very open and receptive, because that only shows your willingness to communicate, right? If you have, let's say, pinched lips or a very tight jaw, or you're frowning, or you're looking away in a very dubious or a disgusted manner, what your body language is saying is very clear, that you do not want to communicate. You're blocking that communication. Let's say when you have your arms folded, or when you're leaning away, or you're pointing out an accusatory finger, you are closing, you're creating barriers in that communication. So body language needs to be open and receptive. What you can do is you can keep a good eye contact. You can nod while you're listening. Keep your arms uncrossed. Probably you could lean a little forward if you are sitting, and you can keep your face very loose and relaxed. That is how body language shall also display a lot of perception. And the last part that we need to remember is we need to use whole messages. When I say whole messages, it means that it should have an integral component about observations, the thoughts, the feelings, as well as the needs of your partner. So it should be an incorporation of all these four elements. Okay. Now moving ahead to the sixth solution. Now this is a very, very important thing that we need to keep in check. Are thinking errors, right? So what happens is that while we are doing anything, let's say while I'm talking to you, while you're listening to me, while we are cooking, while we are driving, there is a constant talk going on in my head, a constant monologue that is going on in my head, right? And when you get skilled at hearing this inner monologue, you shall also get a chance to evaluate its accuracy, right? So not everything that you say to yourself about your partner or your relationship or your marriage is absolutely true, right? Sometimes what happens is that you leave out the important parts of the picture, or sometimes you might exaggerate, sometimes you might make up things to black and white. And these are the thinking errors. These are the distortions that can actually alter your sense of an event, and your reactions, your emotional responses can get very skewed. They'll be aligned to one negative direction only. So it's almost like, thinking errors are almost like, it's like a picture, that has been retouched. The original experience is kind of lost beneath your, interpretations, beneath your assumptions. So because of that, you might just end up responding to something you've largely made up in your own head. So hence thinking errors and, cognitive distortions is something that we must always learn to recognize and change if they are inaccurate, if they are bordering towards a distorted thinking, because it will have a huge impact on your relationship. It will make you emotionally very reactive. So I have a few thinking errors for you to quickly go through and assess yourself whether you identify with any of them. So the first one talks about tunnel vision. So here what happens, as the name suggests, that in my thought, while I'm thinking, I filter out the important parts of the picture. I'm sorry. And when I filter out these important parts, they are usually the good parts. And I kind of keep on focusing on the negative part only. That's how my tunnel vision is, just like a tunnel. I'm just visualizing in a tunnel. I don't look beyond, right? Then there's something called like an assumed intent. So assumed intent as a thought distortion talks about mind reading, right? Wherein you make assumptions of the motives, of the desires, and the feelings of your partner, right? Magnification means exaggeration. You make and you imagine things worse than they are. You overgeneralizing, you start overgeneralizing by putting in words like all, every, always, none, everyone, just a blank state of generalization. That is what is magnification. Global label, I'm sure you all understand, it's like a negative identity tag that you put onto your partner. Then we have black and white thinking or dichotomization. So here what happens is that either things are completely white or they're completely black. They are completely good or they're completely bad. There is no gray area. And there is no gray area means there is no area for improvement. You're either perfect or you're just not there. So that's how you see those complex needs, those feelings, and those motivations as distinguishing them between good or bad. And hence that becomes a thought error. Then the next one talks about a fractured logic. As the word says, you kind of, come up with a big conclusion from hardly very little evidence, because he did this, it means this. You don't have much supporting evidence, but your conclusions are very, very firm. So that's where your logic is fractured. Then the next one talks about control fallacies. So here what happens is that you assume rather, that you are responsible for all the problems that is happening in your current life, and you're completely helpless, and you have to fix up everything. It's probably, or on the other hand, you might feel that it's your partner's responsibility to fix up everything, right? So it's like an all or none this thing control fallacy that you have in your hand, right? And the last error talks about letting it out fallacy. Here, what you assume is that all your pain is because of your partner. It's completely your partner's fault, and you think that he or she deserves to be punished for that, right? So letting go out fallacy is that thinking error here. So again, as in a part of the activity, what I'll suggest is that go back to your thought processes whenever you have the time and identify if you ever might have displayed any of these errors in your thought process. Right? And moving ahead. Yeah. The seventh solution talks about problem solving. Now, I have a very clear-cut solution here. So this skill, problem solving skill, basically focuses on dealing with the current situation, right? Like the other skills and the other solutions that we discussed, they were mostly dealing with our emotional issues, right? So here what we do is you state the problem, right? And when you're stating the problem, be very, very objective. It's almost like, reading a newspaper story, just the facts, no blame, no interpretations, no critical component of the partner. Just state the problem. Who, what, where, when, how, why. That's all that you have to state. And then you set goals that are realistic. You brainstorm the solutions. You look at the pros and the cons. You figure out a trial period when you're going to try out that solution. And then you finally evaluate the results and you decide on to select that particular option as your problem solving skill. So this is a simple solution, yet very effective. Okay. And the next solution talks about conflict resolution. So it's very important, it's very hard to develop a healthy conflict resolution skill without really establishing a key attitude. And what is that attitude? That you have to support your partner in the different needs and desires. And this attitude, this positive attitude, has to have three components. Very, very important three components that we must always remember. A, conflicts are inevitable. If there are two people in a relationship, you might always have two different things. And what you need to understand that it's okay to want different things. It is just merely an acknowledgement that, each of that person in the relationship has unique needs, right? And will have their own taste, will have their own preferences, will have their own fears, will have their own goals. So that acknowledgement, that attitude has to be present. The second important and the vital thing that you need to remember that each of the partner's needs are equally valid. Half of the time we end up debating whose need is greater than the other one. However, we don't figure out the attitude should always be to understand that they are equally valid, right? You need to rest it as important that, what you want to be done is something that your partner might not want. So the importance needs to be clearly laid out. Then the third thing is that conflict must be solved together as partners, right? Because the moment you start using aversive techniques, what happens is that you either have a winner or you have a loser. And the moment you have winners and losers in an argument as part of conflict resolution, as a couple, you've already lost the relationship. So it should always be solved together as partners, right? The key attitude here is that you need to regard the conflict as a problem that both the partner need to solve, right? Why? Because as we stated earlier, that the needs are also equally valid. Hence, the problems are also equally valid and require the same amount of attention. And no solution is acceptable that ignores either partner's wants or feelings, right? So that is about the last solution that we have. Now with that, coming towards the end of this presentation, I have a small 4-week relationship improvement plan for all of you to use and apply. Now, as you go through this plan, there is a small ritual that I would want you to do, right? Probably what you can do is you can set aside 30 minutes in the evening, maybe after dinner, Maybe after once you've done all the work, you're in a clear state of mind. You can prepare a cup of tea, coffee, soothing drink, anything. Put on a little bit of relaxing music. Find a comfortable place to sit. Probably you can, dim the lights, light a candle. Make sure you are open, make sure you're respectful, make sure you're non-judgmental. Give each other a hug, pass on a beautiful smile, and then start with this 1 week, 4 week of relationship improvement plan per week, right? So, but these conditions are going to apply for all the 4 weeks. These conditions, they will establish your connection ritual. So, the first week, you're going to explore yourself as a couple, right? You're going to explore the theme of who we are and who we are as a couple. And the themes that you're going to touch upon here would be how exactly you met, how did you fall in love, how did you care, how were you affectionate, what was the acceptance, what was the empathy like, what was the intimacy like. So these are the factors that you're going to explore in the first week, right? The second week, you're going to look at exploration of yourself. Here, you're going to look at factors about who you really are, exploring what you as an individual are bringing to the relationship, right? Your childhood, your family of origin roles, your personality, your temperament, your influences, the spirituality component, your values, how you think, what you think. These are the things that you will explore on about your self parameter. Then towards the third week, you will explore your couple dynamics. That is, how do we work together? You explore how you communicate, what are your conflict resolution style, how is your intimacy, how is your trust, what are the areas when you're defensive, the boundaries, the parenting, and the staying in sync style. So that is where you explore the couple dynamics in your third week. And the last week, you will talk about factors that will strengthen your relationship, like romance, joy, gratitude, respect, forgiveness, challenges, setbacks, losses, relationship saving account, life path. When we talk about life path, you look at the past, the present, and the future. And how do you plan to keep connected? And when we talk about relationship savings account, it is almost like making deposits in your relationship account, something that you can withdraw later. So these are some ways that you talk about strengthening your relationship. So with that, I think we are ready for the questions.
Thank you so much, Shruti. That was really an excellent presentation. And I was just making notes as you were talking, and one thing that I can say is that earlier on in a relationship, I think couples will act the way they should really act, but over a period of time, couples take each other for granted, and a lot of the issues start happening, right? And this what you have identified should hopefully put them back into the state that they would want to be. And as the topic says, putting the soul back in the soulmate. 8 different solutions, and I think obviously they need to be worked on together. And it's incredible. So I would invite people to put their questions in the chat, and Shruti will answer them. So if anyone's got any questions at all, please put them in the chat. Thank you to everyone once again for joining today. There were some questions which were coming through as you were talking. One of them was talking about distortion. And distortion, I think somebody's saying distortion thinking depends on each person's life experience. Is that correct?
Yes, Absolutely. I mean, if you look at understanding human mind and behavior, we bring in three very simple elements. The first element is what you think, because what you think eventually will lead on to how you feel, what you feel, and that eventually leads on to how you behave. And that the first step of thought is always based in the individual's experiences, in the individual's past. And that is why when we sit to kind of address the cognitive errors, we always analyze what was the origin, where did this error actually come from, right? That origin, that experience needs to go back. You need to revisit it, because then your emotional understanding and your behavioral manifestation will make sense. So that is very true.
Thank you, Shruti. We've got a question from Harish, and he says, what is your view on, hang on, sorry, just a second. What is your view on having a balance of love and detachment?
Right. So, could you define detachment here and love also?
Harish, do you want to unmute yourself and talk about that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shruti, for your time and your knowledge.
My pleasure.
Yeah, my first relationship, I was really hurt, and then I brought in back my spiritual teaching knowledge, and always tried to apply to have a certain amount of detachment and have love at the same time. But it's difficult to keep the balance, right? So sometimes you feel that, am I giving enough love and care, as or am I too detached, or am I giving too much love and not enough detachment? Am I too stuff like
Right.
I feel it's important to have a certain amount of detachment, but then there's always the feeling that, am I giving enough love?
Yeah. I'm missing out something, right? That fear.
Yeah.
Right, right. I think that's a wonderful question to put forth, Harish. So what here would be important, that self-doubt that might creep in such a scenario. The best sort solution would be to understand that as individuals, we all play different roles, right? You might be playing the role of a son, of a father, of a brother, of a husband, of a partner, of a workmate, of a friend. There are different varieties of roles that we play in our day-to-day relationship. And each role has a particular set of responsibilities. If I can identify my basic responsibilities associated with each role and justify the functioning for every role, I can assure myself of the balance. Whether that might be for any emotion, whether it may be for love, detachment, forgiveness, being present, any emotional manifestation. If I can assure myself the balance between the roles and responsibilities, that reassurance will never have to be sought separately.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Harish. So Malek Sultanji, thank you so much for joining. And Shruti, she says that this presentation and content is so necessary in time during pandemic, and since people are at home and get bored and talk and end up debating, arguing, and bringing up history. I think so. It's again a big thank you from Malek Sultanji to you as well, Shruti. And this notion, this idea of bringing up history, I think that is so common in an argument. Inevitably, that gets brought up, whether we want to or not, whether we like it or not. But history does crop up, doesn't it?
Oh yes, it does. It does.
Whilst it's not good, but it it's people forget it's not good, but it does get brought up.
Yes, and to add on to that, Umesh, what really happens is that I mean, when you're angry and when you're fighting, what is the objective? Your objective is always to hurt the other person. Right? And bringing up the past, bringing up the old memories, you're very sure that you're doing so. And that is why one tends to kind of, flow towards that irresistible path of going towards the past history. That urge takes one there.
True, true. I mean, there is an interesting thought, and somebody, in fact, Rohini has mentioned that by bringing up history, you could learn from it. And yeah, it is quite an interesting situation, whether you do or you don't. And at what point do you bring in the history? I think when you're angry and when you bring up the history, I think there's always
There's a lot of damage.
yes. So okay. What else? I think I've got one. Harish mentions that one needs to forgive in the subconsciousness, which is from that point, yes, forgiveness is obviously important, but just by forgiving, are we getting to the base level, to the roots of the issue? I think forgiveness, after discussing the issue and moving forward, I think is the right thing to do.
Yes, that's very vital. Being able to forgive.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, we've got some other questions. One brings history means you haven't forgiven really, because it takes a lot to forgive truly. Shivamji, thank you for that.
Yes.
And that is absolutely a true point. Yes. Vibhuti is saying, I feel space is important just as much as having togetherness. And that is so important, isn't it? I think, yes, one can be together all the time, but I think they do, individuals need their own space, if nothing else, for thinking things through as well. Great, some interesting comments coming through. Anything else? Any other questions? Please put them in the chat. If not, we will end this session fairly soon. It is 3:10 in the UK. So yeah, I don't think there's any other questions. And at this point in time, Shruti, I'd like to say a big thank you to you for giving up your Sunday evening for us and talking through this very interesting topic. A lot of these, of course, apply to couples, but some of the solutions do apply to all the relationships as well. It's not just to the couples. Thank you so much, and really, really do appreciate. I've got one last comment from Vibhuti. From past coaching skills training, it is considered 3 to 4 minutes is the maximum absorbing time or listening time. That is true. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much to everyone, and have a lovely afternoon. People in the UK, do be careful. It's very, very hot outside. Keep hydrated. Tomorrow and Tuesday are going to be worse. And yeah, do look after yourselves. And I guess, am I right in saying, Shruti, in India, the rainy season has started?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And it brings along the humidity.
Right. Okay. Do look after yourself.
Thank
well.
you to everybody.
And we'll talk very soon. I will call you soon after, and we'll to rest of our people who joined. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.